On the day my father died, I didn't just lose a parent. I lost everything I thought I knew about family, love, and loyalty. People say death brings peace. They've clearly never been to a will reading. When the call came from our family lawyer, I didn't feel grief first. I felt nothing. My father and I hadn't spoken in almost 5 years. Every conversation we ever had ended like a slammed door. And yet, when I heard the words, "Your father's gone," something cracked inside me. Not sorrow, not relief, something in between, like the sound of glass splitting under pressure. I drove upstate that night, through sheets of rain that blurred the highway lights into long silver streaks. The Cole estate sat at the top of Ridgeway Hill, the same sprawling mansion that had been both my home and my prison for 20 years. Even from the driveway, it looked exactly as I remembered. Tall, pale stone walls, sharp iron gates, and windows that glowed faintly. Gold behind thick curtains, beautiful, cold, untouchable. The funeral had already passed. I wasn't invited. Victoria made sure of that. My stepmother, Victoria Cole, was the kind of woman who could turn sympathy into strategy. She'd married my father when I was 11, just a year after my mother's sudden death. I still remember her first day in the tour house, walking through the grand foyer in her black heels that clicked like the ticking of a clock. Her smile too white, too calm. She didn't come to join our family. She came to claim it, and she did, piece by piece, room by room, until my father, the man who used to take me fishing, the man who once said I'd run the company one day, barely looked me in the eye anymore. By the time I turned 18, I was invisible in my own home. That's the thing about wealth. It doesn't just build walls. It builds distance. When I stepped inside the mansion again after all those years, the air smelled the same. Cedar polish, marble dust, and old money. Everything gleamed, but nothing felt alive. Victoria greeted me in the grand hall, her perfume thick with expensive floral notes that almost masked the poison underneath. "Ethan," she said, her tone light, her eyes sharp. "You came?" "I figured I should," I said. My voice sounded strange, like it belonged to someone else. She smiled, that perfect, practiced smile. "Your father would have wanted that." Would he? I wasn't so sure. Behind her, Damien and Chloe lingered at the bottom of the staircase. Damien was leaning against the rail, hands in his pockets, his expression already amused, like he'd been waiting for this show all week. Chloe, in her silk cream dress, stared down at her phone, pretending not to see me. "Let's not drag this out," Victoria said smoothly, turning to the man beside her, our family lawyer. Mr. Graves. He was old, stooped, with eyes like worn-out paper. He cleared his throat and gestured toward the study. The study hadn't changed either. Same walnut shelves, same ticking clock, same heavy curtains drawn against the rain. And above the mantel, that portrait. My father, Theodore Cole, frozen in oil and canvas, his hand resting on the arm of a chair like a king surveying his empire. The artist had captured him perfectly. Every line of control, every shadow of pride. Even dead, he still commanded the room. We sat in silence around the long mahogany table. The lawyer opened a folder and began to read. "Theodore Richard Cole, being of sound mind and body, does hereby leave his final will and testament." The words rolled like dull thunder. Damien leaned back, spinning a silver pen between his fingers. Chloe sighed dramatically. Victoria didn't move an inch. She was a statue in pearls. Then came the part that made the air change. "To my beloved wife, Victoria Cole, I leave full ownership of the Cole estate, all controlling shares of Cole Industries, and complete access to all associated accounts." Victoria's smile didn't flicker. She'd known. She always knew. "To my daughter, Chloe Cole, and my son, Damien Cole, I leave the remaining balance of my liquid assets to be split equally." Damien smirked, tapping his pen against the table like applause. Chloe looked up, grinning. "And to my eldest son, Ethan Cole." The room went still. "I leave a sealed envelope to be opened privately, as per my written instruction." That was it. No property, no company, just an envelope. Mr. Graves slid it across the table toward me. Cream paper, sealed with red wax bearing the family crest, 2 lions and a crown. My father's symbol of power. It felt heavy, even though I knew it wasn't. Victoria's voice was smooth as silk. "How poetic," she said. "Your father always did love his little gestures." Damien chuckled. "What's inside, Ethan? Maybe it's a coupon for therapy. You'll need it." Chloe laughed softly. "Maybe it's a key to one of the empty rooms." Seemed symbolic. I didn't respond. I just tore the wax seal open. Inside, there was one folded piece of paper and a single airline ticket. Paris, France, one-way departure next week. No note, no explanation, just the ticket. Victoria leaned forward, curiosity dancing behind her polished facade. "How romantic," she said mockingly. "Perhaps your father wanted you to find yourself abroad." Damien snorted. "Or just lose yourself." I stood up slowly, the chair legs scraping the floor. My pulse thundered in my ears. "Is that all?" I asked the lawyer. Mr. Graves hesitated. "Your father instructed that I give you only what was written, Mr. Cole. He seemed adamant." I nodded. Of course he did. My father had always spoken more in riddles than reasons. I slipped the ticket into my jacket pocket and turned toward the door as I left. Victoria's voice followed me. "Ethan," she said, her tone dripping with sugar. "Do send us a postcard, won't you?" Their laughter echoed after me like ghosts. Outside, the sky was bruised and gray. Rain slicked the driveway, the marble steps glistening like they were made of glass. I stood there staring up at the house that had never truly been mine. That's when I saw something, faint, near the top window of my father's old office. A light flickered, once, then again. A signal. A glitch in the power? No, it blinked in a pattern. 3 short, 2 long, 3 short. I froze. I'd seen that signal before. When I was a kid, my father used to tap that same rhythm on my door, Morse code for one word. Run. My breath caught in my throat. He'd taught me that when I was 9, a secret between us. Back when he was still my dad, not the man buried in boardrooms and broken promises. Was it possible someone inside was trying to send me a message? Or was it just my mind playing tricks on me? Either way, I knew standing there wouldn't give me answers. So I turned and walked into the storm. That night I couldn't sleep. The sound of rain against the hotel window reminded me of the night my mother died. The way my father had stood silent in the hallway, his face unreadable, his voice calm as he told me she was gone. No tears, no trembling, just control. Always control. I stared at the plane ticket on the desk beside me. Paris, why Paris? My father had never spoken about France. Except once. When I was 16, I'd overheard him arguing with someone on the phone. His voice was sharp, almost panicked, a tone I'd never heard from him before. He said something like, "If she surfaces in Paris, we lose everything." Then he slammed the door. At the time, I thought he was talking about a business deal, but now it felt different. Who was she? And why did I suddenly feel like that one-way ticket was never meant to send me away, but to send me toward something? The next morning, I opened my laptop and searched Cole family Paris connection. Nothing. No press mentions. No holdings. No property. Just silence. Then I typed, Theodore Cole, France, 1993. And there it was. A single newspaper clipping buried in the archives of a small Parisian journal. Headline, American developer linked to disappearance of local woman. My chest tightened. The date, April 1993. The year after I was born. The article didn't name the woman, but it mentioned my father's presence in Paris on a private acquisition trip. And one strange detail. Sources claim Mr. Cole departed the country abruptly 2 days later with an infant in tow. An infant. That was me. My father had never mentioned bringing me from anywhere. I'd grown up believing I was born in New York. But what if I wasn't? What if my entire life had started with a lie? That night, I booked the flight. I packed a single bag, the plane ticket, my passport, and the clipping. As I zipped it shut, I glanced at the window again. Rain. Always rain. For 20 years, that mansion had felt like a cage. But now I realized, maybe it was a shield. Maybe my father had been hiding me, not rejecting me. Either way, I had to know. And if the truth was buried in Paris, I was going to dig it up, no matter who tried to stop me. When I boarded that plane, I didn't look back once. As the engines roared to life and the city lights faded beneath the clouds, a thought crossed my mind, one I couldn't shake. Maybe that ticket wasn't a punishment. Maybe it was protection, because someone out there wanted me gone. And my father, for all his silence, all his cruelty, might have been the only reason I was still alive. Paris was colder than I expected. Not the kind of cold that bites at your skin. The kind that seeps into your bones, slow and silent until you feel it in your breath. When I stepped out of Charles de Gaulle Airport, the air smelled faintly of rain and iron. The sky hung low and gray, and for a moment I stood there, clutching my single suitcase, wondering if I'd made a mistake. But the moment passed. I hailed a taxi. Rue de Rivoli, I said. showing the driver the address scribbled at the bottom of the newspaper clipping. It wasn't an exact location, just a reference to a street in the article, mentioned as the site of the American investor's Paris residence, my father's residence. As the car pulled away, the city unfolded before me. Narrow streets, gray rooftops, the distant shimmer of the Seine. Paris had a heartbeat all its own, a rhythm of footsteps and whispers, of lives brushing against each other without ever truly touching. And I realized something strange. I felt calm. Maybe because, for the first time in years, I wasn't walking in someone else's shadow. The apartment building on Rue de Rivoli was old, the kind of place that looked like it had stories to tell. The facade was streaked with age, ivy crawling up from the stone, windows framed by weathered ironwork. Inside, the elevator groaned with the sound of decades. It stopped at the 5th floor, where a brass number 52 glinted on the door in front of me. My pulse quickened. The nameplate below it was blank. I didn't know what I expected, maybe to find it empty, long forgotten. But when I knocked, there was movement inside. Footsteps, soft, deliberate. Then the door opened. The woman who stood there looked like she'd stepped out of another time. Her hair, silver and loosely tied back, framed a face that carried both grace and exhaustion. Her eyes, sharp, intelligent, but clouded with something, unspoken, lingered on me for a long moment before she spoke. "Ethan Cole," she said, her accent lightly French. My chest tightened. "You know who I am?" She gave a small, tired smile. "Of course I do. You look just like him." "Who?" I asked, even though I already knew the answer. "Your father." Her words landed like a knife. "Who are you?" I asked, stepping forward. She hesitated, then opened the door wider. "Come in, it's cold." The apartment was filled with old books, photographs, and a smell that reminded me of cedar and thyme. On one wall there was a large map of France, pinned with red markings, small dots connected by strings. She motioned toward a chair. I sat. She didn't. "My name is Isabelle Laurent," she said finally. "I worked with your father." "A long time ago." "Worked with him?" I frowned. "In real estate?" She laughed softly. "Not exactly. Your father was many things, Ethan. But before he became a tycoon, he was, how do I say it?" She searched for the word. "A man running from something." I leaned forward. "Running from what?" She met my gaze. "From your mother." The words froze the air between us. I blinked. "What are you talking about?" "My mother died when I was 2. Her name was Eleanor. She—" "Wasn't your mother," Isabel interrupted quietly. The silence that followed felt endless. I stared at her, waiting for her to take it back, to say I'd misunderstood. But she didn't. She just watched me, as if bracing for the weight of what she'd unleashed. "What do you mean?" My voice came out low, unsteady. She turned away, walking to a cabinet in the corner. From inside, she pulled out a small box, old, wooden, with my father's initials burned into the lid. "Your father left this here," she said. "Told me if anything ever happened to him, you'd come." She handed it to me. The box was light. Inside was a stack of letters bound with faded blue ribbon, and a photograph. The photo was of a woman holding a baby. She was young, maybe in her late 20s, her hair dark, her eyes bright and kind. There was something familiar about her, the curve of her cheek, the small scar above her lip. "That's your real mother," Isabel said. "Her name was Amélie Laurent." I looked up sharply. "Laurent? As in you?" She nodded slowly. "My sister." My hands shook. "This doesn't make sense." "My father told me my mother died in a car accident in New York." Isabel sighed. "Yes, that's what he told everyone. But Amélie didn't die in any accident. She disappeared." "And your father?" "Theodore took you away before the police could ask too many questions." I felt the room tilt. My breath came shallow. "You're saying my father kidnapped me?" She looked at me with sad, weary eyes. "He said he was protecting you. From the people who wanted to hurt her, and from the truth." "The truth about what?" She hesitated. "About why your mother vanished, and what she was about to reveal." I gripped the photo tighter. What was she going to reveal? Isabel turned toward the map on the wall, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Your father's empire was not built honestly. Ethan, there were deals, illegal ones, land stolen from families who never saw a cent. Amélie discovered everything. She was going to expose him, and then she was gone." The room seemed to hum with silence. I couldn't breathe. I stood, pacing. You're telling me my father killed her? I'm telling you, Isabel said softly, that he loved her too much to let her destroy him. Whatever happened that night, it broke him. He came here one last time, left this box with me, and took you away. I stared at the letters in my hand. And you never tried to find me? Her eyes softened. I did, many times, but Theodore was powerful. I was just a woman with no proof, no money, and a sister everyone thought was dead. I sank back into the chair, my mind spinning. My entire life, every story I'd been told, was a carefully built illusion, and now it was crumbling. What do I do now? I whispered. Isabel's voice steadied. You read the letters. Your mother wrote them for you before she vanished. She wanted you to know who she really was. She handed me the top letter, its paper yellowed and fragile. The handwriting was delicate, looping, like a melody written in ink. My dearest Ethan, if you're reading this, then you're old enough to know the truth. I have loved you from the moment I held you in my arms. But love, in this world, is not always enough to keep you safe. Your father is not the man he seems. If I disappear, do not hate him, but do not trust him either. Someone is watching us, someone who wants what your father built. And they will not stop until they have it. If he sends you away one day, follow the river. It will lead you to me. Amity. I stared at the words. The ink smudged in places as if tears had fallen there long ago. The river, I murmured. What does that mean? Isabel's expression shifted. The Seine, she said quietly. She lived near it. There was a small property, an old boathouse outside the city. It was where she and your father met. Is it still there? She nodded. Yes, but be careful, Ethan. Whatever secrets your father buried, others may still be digging for them. That night, I stood on the balcony of my cheap rented room overlooking the streetlights. The sounds of Paris floated up, laughter, engines, the faint hum of life. But my mind was somewhere else, on that photo. Those words, and the shadow of the man I thought I knew. I took out my phone and searched Emily Laurent disappearance 1993. Nothing, no record, no mention. It was like she had never existed, and yet her face was burned into my memory. My real mother. I thought of my father's last message. The flickering light in the window. Run. Maybe he wasn't warning me to escape danger. Maybe he was warning me to find it. The next morning I set out for the boathouse. It was an hour outside the city, near a sleepy village by the riverbank. The air smelled of wet earth and wood smoke. The boathouse was still there, half collapsed. Vines crawling over the roof. The door hanging slightly ajar. Inside, dust motes floated like ghosts. A broken chair lay in the corner. The floorboards creaked beneath my steps. And there, on the far wall, faint beneath layers of dust and decay, was a message scratched into the wood. Aplasti Ari. I ran my fingers over the letters. Emily, Theodore, Ethan. It wasn't just a place of meeting. It was ours. Then I saw something else. A metal panel beneath the stairs, half concealed by debris. I pulled it open. Inside was a small metal box, and within it, a flash drive sealed in plastic. Taped to it was a note written in the same looping script. For Ethan, when the time is right, you'll understand why your father could never destroy me. I didn't know what it meant, but I knew one thing. This wasn't over. This was only the beginning. As I stepped outside, the river shimmered under the gray sky. And for the first time, I realized the truth wasn't buried under the mansion or hidden in a will. It was here, in this place where love, betrayal, and blood all ran together like the current of the Seine. And someone, somewhere, still didn't want me to find it. When the lawyer arrived 2 days later, the atmosphere in the Chandler mansion was electric, not with grief, but with greed. The marble floors gleamed under the afternoon sun, and I stood at the edge of the grand living room, feeling more like an intruder than a son. Victoria sat in the center of the room, her blonde hair perfectly arranged, lips curved into a rehearsed expression of solemnity. Damien lounged beside her, a smirk barely hidden beneath his fake grief. Chloe scrolled on her phone, her manicured nails tapping against the screen like the ticking of a clock, counting down to my humiliation. The lawyer, Mr. Franklin, was an old man, short, balding, and wearing glasses that kept slipping down his nose. His briefcase rested on his knees as he cleared his throat and looked around nervously. Mrs. Chandler, and family, he began, his voice trembling just slightly. As per Mr. Theodore Chandler's final will, I am here to execute his last wishes. Victoria placed a hand over her heart. Oh, how he loved us all so dearly, she said, her tone dripping with sugar-coated insincerity. I wanted to laugh or scream. Instead, I just stood silently, arms crossed, watching as the lawyer opened the first envelope. To my beloved wife, Victoria Chandler, he read aloud. I leave all current real estate holdings, the family mansion, and 60% of my company shares. Victoria exhaled sharply through her nose, pretending to dab at the corner of her eyes with a tissue. Her smile, however, betrayed her performance. Mr. Franklin continued, to my children, Damien and Chloe Chandler, I leave equal portions of my remaining assets, including investments, vehicles, and the yacht. Chloe gasped in excitement, clutching her mother's arm. Damien leaned back, triumphant, muttering, knew it. Then came the silence, the kind that fills a room and presses against your chest until breathing becomes difficult. Mr. Franklin's hand hesitated before reaching for the final envelope. Small, thin, and sealed with an old wax stamp I hadn't seen since childhood. And to my eldest son, Samson Chandler. All eyes turned toward me. Damien chuckled under his breath. Chloe smirked. Victoria didn't even bother pretending curiosity. I leave this. Mr. Franklin extended the envelope toward me. I stared at it, confused. My fingers trembled slightly as I took it from his hand. It was heavier than I expected. That's it. Damien burst out laughing. He left you paperwork? Victoria chuckled softly, resting a hand on Damien's shoulder. Well, dear, perhaps it's a letter of apology, or maybe directions to a nice, affordable apartment far, far away. Their laughter echoed through the room, cruel and hollow. I didn't respond. I just opened the envelope slowly. Inside was a single piece of paper and something else, a plane ticket. I unfolded the paper first. It was a handwritten note from my father. His writing was sharp and neat, just like the man himself. Samson, if you are reading this, then you already know that everything you thought you lost was never really yours to begin with, but neither was it theirs. There are things you do not yet understand, things I've hidden, not out of cruelty, but out of necessity. You will find your answers in Lyon, France. Go there. Follow the coordinates written on the back of this note. Tell no one. Trust no one. Father? On the back, indeed, were a set of coordinates scribbled in faint ink. I looked up from the letter, my pulse quickening. Victoria was staring at me now, curiosity replacing mockery for just a moment. What's that? She asked sharply. I folded the note and slipped it into my pocket. Nothing important. Damien scoffed. Oh, come on, show us. Maybe it's a job offer. You'll need one, now that you're not part of this family anymore. Chloe joined in, laughing. Or maybe it's a bill for all the years you freeloaded here. Their words barely registered. My mind was spinning. Lyon. Why Lyon? My father had only been to France once that I knew of. Decades ago. On a business trip he refused to talk about. Victoria's voice broke through my thoughts. If your father left you something, you should at least be grateful, Samson. A plane ticket is better than nothing. Perhaps he wanted you to see the world. Her smile was razor sharp. She thought this was over, that I'd walk away quietly. But something in my gut told me this wasn't just a gesture. My father had always been deliberate, meticulous. He never did anything without reason. That night, I sat alone in my room, the room I'd grown up in, now stripped of warmth and memories. The envelope lay open on my desk. The plane ticket gleamed under the lamplight. New York to Lyon, one way. The flight was for the very next morning. I stared at it for hours, replaying every word of my father's note. Tell no one. Trust no one. When I finally stood up, I packed only what I needed, a passport, a few clothes, and the note. The rest, this house, this fake family, could rot. Before leaving, I walked past my father's study. The door was slightly ajar, the air inside thick with the scent of old books and cigar smoke. On his desk sat a photograph, one I had never noticed before. My father, younger, standing beside a woman I didn't recognize. She was elegant, with dark hair and eyes that seemed to hide secrets. And behind them, in the photo's background, was a sign written in French. I picked it up, heart pounding. Lyon. I slipped the photograph into my bag. As I stepped out of the mansion for the last time, Damien's laughter followed me from the upstairs window. Bon voyage, brother. Don't get lost. I didn't look back. The night air was cold, but it carried something else, the faint scent of rain and the whisper of change. Somewhere in France, my father had hidden something, a truth powerful enough to make him risk everything to protect it. And as the city lights faded behind me, I made a silent promise. Whatever he wanted me to find, I would find it, no matter what waited for me in Lyon. The next morning I woke up before dawn. The city outside my window was still asleep, blanketed by fog and silence. I stood by the window for a long time, watching as the first hints of orange light crept over the skyline. It felt like the end of something, and the beginning of something far more dangerous. By 6 a.m., I was at JFK Airport. The buzz of travelers, the smell of coffee and jet fuel. It all felt strangely unreal. I moved through the crowd quietly, the ticket clutched in my hand like a key to another life. As I stood in line at security, I caught my reflection in a glass panel. My eyes looked tired, haunted even, but underneath that fatigue was something else, determination. I boarded the plane and sank into my seat near the window. The engines roared to life, and as we lifted off, New York became a blur of lights and clouds beneath me. For 7 hours I sat in silence, staring out the window. I kept rereading my father's note, tracing the coordinates with my thumb. The more I looked at it, the more I felt like every stroke of his pen carried a hidden meaning. When the plane landed in Lyon, it was raining. The air smelled of wet stone and something old, history maybe. The airport was smaller than I expected, quieter, more refined. I grabbed my single bag and started toward the exit, scanning the faces around me. Tourists, families, businessmen, all strangers. But then someone caught my eye. A woman stood near the arrivals gate, holding a small sign that read simply, S. Chandler. I froze. I hadn't told anyone I was coming. She was tall, with dark auburn hair tied neatly, back and sharp eyes that studied every movement around her. There was something unnerving about her composure, calm but alert. I approached cautiously. You're waiting for me? Her gaze met mine. You're Samson Chandler? Yes. She gave a brief nod. Your father asked me to meet you. My heart skipped. You knew him? Her lips curved into a faint knowing smile. You could say that. Come, we shouldn't talk here. Every instinct screamed at me not to follow, but the way she said your father, as if she'd known him intimately, pulled me forward. We walked out into the rain. A black car waited by the curb. She opened the back door for me. Get in. I hesitated. At least tell me your name. She looked at me for a moment, her expression unreadable. Then she said, Juliet. The name hung in the air like perfume, mysterious, delicate but somehow dangerous. Inside the car the silence was thick. Raindrops tapped rhythmically against the windows as we drove through narrow, cobblestone streets. Lyon was beautiful, rows of old buildings, bridges arching over wide rivers, but I barely saw any of it. Finally I spoke. You said my father told you to meet me. When? Juliet glanced at me through the rearview mirror. 2 months ago. 2 months. But he died 3 weeks ago. I know, she said softly. The chill in her tone made the hairs on my neck stand up. Then how? She cut me off. Your father was a man who planned for everything, including his own death. The car turned onto a long road lined with ancient plane trees. At the end stood a stone villa, old, majestic, with ivy crawling up its walls. It looked abandoned. Juliet parked and turned to me. He wanted you to see this place first. I stepped out into the rain, staring at the villa. Its windows were dark, the air heavy with the scent of damp earth and decay. Inside, the air was colder. Dust hung in thin beams of light that pierced through cracked shutters. Juliet led me through a grand hall lined with faded portraits, all of them, depicting people who looked vaguely familiar. Chandlers, perhaps? Or people tied to my father's past. She stopped before a large painting of a man standing beside a younger woman. The same woman from the photo I'd taken from my father's desk. My breath caught. Who is she? Juliet turned to face me. Her name was Isabelle Marchand. Was? She's dead. I swallowed hard. How did she know my father? Juliet's eyes locked onto mine. She wasn't just someone he knew, Samson. She was the woman he loved, long before he met Victoria. And she was the one person he could never let go of. I felt the floor shift beneath me. Then why have I never heard of her? Because your father erased her, for your protection. I frowned. Protection from what? Juliet hesitated, her gaze flicking toward the shadows at the far end of the hall. There are things you don't know about your father's empire. He wasn't just a real estate tycoon. He built his fortune on secrets, some of them buried right here in France. She started walking again, motioning for me to follow. We descended a narrow staircase into the basement. The air grew colder, heavier. When we reached the bottom, she stopped before an iron door. Rust streaked its hinges. With a key from her coat pocket, she unlocked it. The room beyond was small, dimly lit by a single bulb. On a wooden table in the center sat an old briefcase. "This belonged to your father," Juliet said quietly. "He told me to give it to you if anything ever happened to him." My pulse thundered in my ears. I stepped closer. The briefcase was sealed with 2 locks, and carved into the leather was a single word, "Verite." "Truth," I murmured. Juliet nodded. "Yes, but the truth is dangerous, Samson. He wanted you to decide whether you were ready to face it." I stared at the case. My hands trembled as I touched the cold metal clasps. "What's inside?" I whispered. Juliet's gaze softened, almost pitying. "Answers. About your father. About Isabel. About what really happened 30 years ago." Before I could respond, a sound echoed from upstairs, the sharp creak of the front door opening. Juliet's expression hardened. "We're not alone." I froze. She grabbed my arm. "Close the case now." The sound of footsteps grew louder, slow, deliberate, approaching the stairs. Juliet reached into her coat and pulled out a small handgun. "Stay behind me," she hissed. My heart pounded as shadows appeared at the top of the staircase. Whoever it was, they knew we were there. Juliet aimed the gun toward the darkness. "Who's there?" No response, just another step, then another. And then a voice, smooth, familiar, chilling. "Hello, brother." My blood ran cold. It was Damien. Somehow he'd followed me all the way to France. And from the cruel smile spreading across his face, I knew he wasn't here for family. He was here for the truth, or to bury it forever. Rain lashed against the windows upstairs as the echo of Damien's voice filled the stone basement. That voice, smug, taunting, perfectly calm, sent a shiver crawling down my spine. It was the same tone he'd used all our lives, the one that always carried that hidden meaning. I win, you lose. Juliet's grip on the gun tightened. "Stay behind me," she whispered, eyes fixed on the staircase. I could hear Damien's shoes clicking down the steps, slow, measured, confident. He wasn't sneaking in, he wanted us to know he was here. "Impressive," he said as his silhouette came into view, his face half lit by the single bulb swinging overhead. "I wasn't sure you'd actually make it all the way to France, brother." Father would be proud, or maybe horrified. "Damien," I said, forcing my voice to stay steady. "How did you find me?" He grinned, brushing rainwater off his coat. "Oh, come on. You didn't think you were the only one Father left clues for, did you? You always were so naive." Juliet raised the gun higher. "Take one more step and I'll—" He smirked. "You'll what, shoot me? You won't. My brother here might be foolish. But he doesn't associate with murderers." Juliet didn't lower the weapon. "You have no idea who I am." "Oh, but I do," Damien said coolly. "Juliet Marchand, daughter of Isabel Marchand. I've been expecting you." The air went still. I turned to Juliet, stunned. What did he just say? Her jaw clenched. "He's lying." But Damien only laughed. "Lying? Oh no, dear sister. I'm telling the truth. Our dear father's greatest sin is standing right here in front of you, Samson. The product of the love affair he spent half his life burying." My stomach dropped. I looked between them, trying to process his words. "Juliet," I whispered, "is that true?" She hesitated for half a second, long enough for the silence to answer for her. Damien saw it too and smiled wider. "Of course it's true. She's your half-sister, Samson. The daughter of the woman Father could never let go of. The same woman our dear stepmother spent years trying to erase from existence." I staggered back a step, my thoughts spinning. "That's not possible." Juliet lowered the gun slightly, her voice shaking. "It's not what you think. I didn't come here to deceive you. I came to protect what your father left behind, and to stop him." Damien's eyes darkened. "Stop me? You can't stop something that's already in motion." He stepped closer, his polished shoes echoing against the stone floor. "Father wasn't as clever as he thought. I've known about this villa for years. I just needed you to open the last door for me." And before Juliet could react, he lunged forward, grabbing the briefcase from the table. "Don't!" I shouted, but he'd already snapped it open. Inside were stacks of old letters, documents, and a small black notebook bound in leather. Damien flipped through it quickly, his eyes gleaming. "This," he said, lifting the notebook, "is the real treasure. Financial records, offshore accounts, property deeds, everything Father built and hid under false names. Billions, Samson. Not millions. Billions. Hidden under Martian trust holdings. Juliet lunged for it, but Damien shoved her back. The gun fell, clattering across the floor. I moved instinctively, tackling him against the wall. We struggled. His elbow slammed into my ribs. My fist caught his jaw. The briefcase fell open again, papers flying like feathers into the air. Still the weak one, Damien hissed, pinning me down. Always clinging to father's approval. You were never meant to have any of it. I gritted my teeth. And you were? He didn't trust you. He never did. That got to him. His smirk faltered for a moment. He trusted me more than he ever trusted you. Juliet scrambled for the gun, raised it, and fired. The bullet slammed into the stone wall inches above Damien's head. He froze. Enough, she shouted. You think this is about money? You think our father's empire is worth killing for? Damien turned to her slowly. Everything is worth killing for if it means power. And your mother knew that better than anyone. Juliet's eyes widened. What do you mean? He smirked again. Oh, she never told you, did she? Isabelle Marchand didn't die of an accident. She was murdered. The words hit like a thunderclap. Juliet went pale. You're lying. I'm not, Damien said softly. Ask our dear stepmother. Victoria had her removed when she got too close to father's secrets. Your mother was going to expose him, expose all of us. I felt sick. You're saying Victoria? Yes, Damien interrupted. She had Isabelle killed, and father covered it up. That's what this entire French estate was built on, blood and silence. Juliet's hand trembled. No. No, she wouldn't. Oh, she would, Damien whispered. And she did. The rain outside intensified, pounding against the windows like fists. Juliet's voice broke. Then father was protecting me. Damien nodded slowly. Yes, he sent you away, changed your name, gave you this villa as a hiding place. But in the end, the truth still found you. He stepped closer, lowering his voice to a venomous whisper. And now I will too. He lunged forward. The gun fired again, and this time a direct hit. Damien collapsed to the ground, clutching his shoulder, blood seeping through his coat. He groaned, his expression twisting between pain and rage. Juliet stood there frozen, the gun still smoking in her hand. I rushed to her side, grabbing the weapon before she could drop it. We have to go, now. She blinked, dazed. The notebook! I grabbed it from the floor and shoved it into my jacket. We'll take it. But we can't stay here. Damien's voice echoed weakly behind us. You think this ends with me? You're fools, Victoria already knows. We ran up the stairs, the thunder outside crashing like cannon fire. By the time we reached the main hall, headlights flashed through the rain-streaked windows. A car had pulled up outside the villa, black, sleek, and unmistakably familiar. Juliet's voice dropped to a whisper. She's here. I turned toward her. Victoria? Juliet nodded slowly. Yes, and she won't leave without what's in that notebook. I gripped it tighter against my chest, every instinct screaming that the storm outside was nothing compared to the one that was about to walk through that door. And as the front door began to open, a single thought cut through the chaos. The fight for my father's legacy wasn't about money anymore. It was about survival. The villa doors burst open with a violent gust of wind. Thunder cracked outside, casting flashes of white light through the doorway. Standing there, drenched yet composed, was Victoria Chandler, my stepmother, wearing a long black coat and a look that could freeze bone. Her heels clicked against the marble floor as she entered, flanked by two men in dark suits. Their faces were emotionless, but their hands never strayed far from the weapons beneath their jackets. Good evening, Samson, Victoria said coolly, her voice cutting through the storm. Or should I say, bonjour? Juliet stiffened beside me. You shouldn't be here. Victoria turned her gaze to her, and for the first time, her expression faltered. Not with guilt, but recognition. Ah, Isabelle's little ghost. Juliet's face drained of color. You killed my mother. Victoria's lips twitched into a small, cruel smile. Killed? Such a crude word. Let's just say I removed a problem before it ruined everything your precious mother and Theodore built. My stomach twisted. You admit it? She shrugged. Why shouldn't I? Your father was going to ruin us all with his sentimentality. That woman, Isabelle, was a distraction. He would have given her everything. The empire, the money. You, Samson, were nothing more than her echo, proof of his weakness. Her voice was calm, but there was venom behind every word. The thunder outside seemed to punctuate her sentences, each one colder than the last. Juliet stepped forward, trembling with anger. "You think you can walk in here and justify murder?" "Oh dear," Victoria said softly. "Don't mistake survival for murder." Theodore understood that eventually. That's why he stayed with me. That's why he left everything to me and my children. I took a step forward. "No, that's not why." She raised an eyebrow. "Excuse me?" "You didn't win, Victoria. You didn't earn a thing. My father left you everything because he knew you'd destroy it. Because he wanted to test you. He left me nothing, except the one thing you could never find." Her eyes narrowed. "The villa." I held up the small black notebook I'd taken from the basement. "No, this." For the first time since she entered, Victoria's mask cracked. The two men behind her shifted, their attention flickering to the notebook. She exhaled sharply. "Give that to me." "No." Her voice hardened. "You don't understand what you're holding. That notebook doesn't just contain your father's accounts. It contains names. Politicians, bankers, officials, all of them bought, bribed, or blackmailed by Theodore Chandler. If that gets out," Juliet's voice rose, "if that gets out, the world will finally see what kind of people you all are." Victoria turned her gaze to Juliet, studying her. "You're just like your mother, righteous, emotional, and just as foolish. Do you have any idea what this could do to you? To your name?" Juliet's hand trembled slightly, but her voice didn't waver. "My mother's name already means more than yours ever will." The tension in the room was suffocating. The rain outside had turned into a relentless roar, and the sound of distant sirens began to pierce through it. Victoria took a slow step forward. "You called the police?" "No," I said, glancing at Damien's blood trail on the stairs. "But your son probably needed an ambulance." Her eyes flashed. "What did you do to him?" "What he forced us to do," Juliet said. "He attacked us. He wanted this notebook." Victoria's voice dropped to a whisper, icy and dangerous. "You made a grave mistake." She raised her hand slightly, and one of the suited men stepped forward. "Give it to me, Samson," she said softly. "And maybe I'll let you walk out of here alive." I glanced at Juliet, then back at Victoria. "You think I came here unprepared?" Victoria's smirk returned. "You always were predictable. Still chasing your father's approval from the grave." But before her man could take another step, flashing blue lights flooded through the villa's windows. Police sirens wailed louder now and closer. The two bodyguards exchanged a look. I smiled faintly. "I didn't call them." "Damien did." Victoria froze. "What?" I nodded toward the staircase. Before we came up, he was still conscious. He must have hit his panic button. And now they'll find him, and all this blood, and start asking questions. For the first time, I saw fear flicker behind her composure. "You wouldn't dare." Juliet stepped forward. "We don't have to." "You trapped yourself, Victoria." The doors burst open again, and this time it wasn't her men. It was the police. Officers stormed in, weapons drawn. "Hands where we can see them!" Victoria's bodyguards froze instantly, their hands raised. But Victoria herself didn't move. She stood in the center of the chaos like a statue carved from marble, staring directly at me. "This isn't over, Samson," she said quietly, as officers surrounded her. "You don't know what that notebook will cost you. Your father destroyed lives with it, and now it's your turn." As they cuffed her wrists, she turned her head slightly and added, almost in a whisper, "You think this is justice? But it's just the beginning of your punishment." They dragged her out into the rain. Juliet and I stood in silence for a long time. The storm began to fade, the first hints of dawn bleeding into the horizon. I looked down at the notebook in my hands. Its leather was cracked, its pages soaked with age and secrets. "Do you think she's right?" Juliet asked softly. "That this will destroy us?" I took a deep breath. "Maybe, but hiding it destroyed enough already." We walked out together, the cold morning air biting at our faces. The police cars lined the long gravel driveway, their red and blue lights flashing like ghosts of justice. Behind us, the Chandler Villa, once a symbol of wealth and pride, now stood as a hollow monument to deceit. As we reached the gate, a detective stopped us. "Mr. Chandler, before you go, there's one more thing." He handed me an envelope, sealed in wax. "Where did this come from?" I asked. "One of our officers found it in a drawer in your father's study upstairs," he said. "It's addressed to you." I turned it over. In the center, written in my father's unmistakable handwriting, were the words, "To my son, Samson, when the storm clears, open this. The truth will finally make sense. I looked at Juliet, my fingers trembling slightly as I broke the seal. Inside was a single page, and what I read made my knees nearly buckle. It was a will, a second will, to my true heir, Samson Chandler, and to Juliet Marchand, equal inheritors of my estate, properties and holdings under Chandler Industries. But above all, you inherit the truth. Use it wisely. Do not become what I was. Redeem what I destroyed. Juliet gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. I stared at the paper in disbelief. He changed it. He gave it all back to us. And then, at the bottom of the page, I saw one final line, hastily written, almost as if he'd known time was running out. If you're reading this, it means Victoria failed. I only wish I could have told you the truth in person. Protect Juliet. She is family, the only one who truly matters. I folded the letter carefully, slipping it into my coat. Juliet looked at me, tears mixing with the rain on her cheeks. What now? I took one last look at the villa, the house that had haunted every chapter of my life. Now, I said quietly, we rebuild. Not the empire, the family. And as the first light of dawn broke through the gray, I realized that the inheritance my father had truly left me wasn't the money, or the company, or even the notebook full of names. It was clarity, the chance to finally end the cycle of greed that had consumed us all. But deep down, I knew Victoria's final words weren't just a threat. They were a promise, because some ghosts never die. They wait, watching, for their turn to rise again. It had been 6 months since that night. 6 months since Victoria was led away in handcuffs. Since the Chandler mansion was emptied, and the name Chandler no longer echoed in boardrooms or headlines. New York felt different now, colder, quieter. Maybe it was me who had changed. Juliet and I had moved into a small brownstone in Brooklyn. No marble floors, no crystal chandeliers, just creaking stairs, a tiny balcony, and the warmth of a life finally lived freely. For the first time, I felt like I could breathe. The press had feasted on the scandal for months. Chandler empire crumbles. After secret will discovered. Step family. Greed exposed in high society. War. But the real story, the one that mattered, stayed between us and that old, cracked notebook, because we still hadn't opened all of it. Juliet sat across from me at the kitchen table one rainy morning, the same kind of rain that had washed away the past. She ran her finger over the notebook's edge. Are you ready? I hesitated. It's strange. We've had it for months, and I still feel like it's staring back at me. She smiled faintly. Then maybe it's time we stared back. I took a deep breath and flipped open the last sealed page. One my father had locked with a wax stamp and a small note that simply said, "For Samson alone, when you're ready to understand." Inside was not a list of names, not accounts, not secrets of bribery or corruption. It was a letter, and it began with a confession. My son, if you are reading this, then the Chandler name has fallen, and perhaps it should. I spent my life building towers, but every one of them stood on lies. The truth is, your mother Isabel did not die by accident. And it was not Victoria who killed her, not directly. My heart stopped. Juliet's eyes widened. What does he mean? I kept reading, my voice shaking. Victoria was the face of the plan, yes. But the order, the decision, came from me. I was weak. The world I lived in devoured mercy, and I let it devour me too. Isabel found out things she shouldn't have, about Chandler Industries, about the shell companies we used to launder money through charity fronts. She threatened to expose me. I tried to stop her. I never meant for it to go that far. But greed is a disease, Samson. It blinds you until you mistake destruction for protection. When she died, a part of me died with her. But I couldn't let them see my guilt. So I buried it, along with her name. And when you grew up, I saw the same fire in your eyes that she had. I knew you'd come for the truth. That's why I left you the ticket. France was not your exile, son. It was your beginning. The truth I couldn't say out loud. I stopped reading. My throat tightened. Juliet was staring at me, tears gathering in her eyes. Your father, I nodded weakly. He killed your mother. The rain outside seemed to grow louder, as if echoing the sound of everything breaking inside me. I wanted to hate him, to curse his name, but the letter wasn't finished. You will hate me for this, and you should. But you must understand. Victoria destroyed what remained of me long before she took control. She made me believe that power was love, that legacy was forgiveness. I left everything to her because I knew greed would eat her alive, just as it did me. But the will you now hold, the empire you inherit, that's my last chance at redemption. Destroy it if you must, or rebuild it in her memory. Isabel deserved better. So do you. The ink had bled at the end, like tears frozen in time. I sat there for a long time, staring at the page. Juliet whispered, "What will you do?" I folded the letter carefully, placed it back in the notebook, and said, "End it." That week we did what no Chandler before us ever would have dared. We shut it all down. The accounts, the shell companies, the investments, the empire. We liquidated everything and funneled the money into a global housing trust. One built in Isabel Marchand's name. The media called it the Chandler collapse. But for us it was rebirth. Months later, at a small memorial garden outside Paris, Juliet placed a white rose beside a stone bearing her mother's name. I added another, for my father. Not for forgiveness, but for closure. As we turned to leave, Juliet slipped her hand into mine. "Do you think your father's at peace now?" I looked up at the sky, gray, quiet, and endless. "I think," I said slowly, for the first time in his life. "He finally is." We walked away together. The rain beginning to fall again, gentle this time, cleansing. And though the ghosts of the Chandler name would always whisper in the dark corners of memory, I no longer feared them, because the truth, no matter how painful, had set us free. Months later, a small package arrived at our door in Brooklyn. No sender, no note, just a black envelope. Inside was a photograph. It showed my father standing beside a woman I didn't recognize and taken years before my birth. Behind them was a project blueprint stamped Chandler France Initiative. On the back, in my father's handwriting, were 4 words. "Some legacies never die." Juliet met my eyes. "What does that mean?" I smiled faintly, closing the envelope. "It means maybe our story isn't over yet." And somewhere, deep inside, I could almost hear my father's voice again. Not the tycoon, not the tyrant, but the man he once wanted to be. "Build something worth keeping, son.